Welcome to part 3 of my AFC November World Cup qualifying predictions, guys. I've already made a video about Group A and Group B. Those are out now on the channel. This is going to be all focused on Group C, and I need you in the comments to let me know your one bold take for Group C during the November window. Drop a like on the video and hit subscribe so you do not miss more Asian footy content here on Deadball TV, including at least one live stream from the November window, as well as a bunch of analysis videos after the window closes. Let's start with Australia versus Saudi Arabia in Melbourne, and this match is going to be the battle of the new coaches. We have Tony Popovich, who was appointed last window as Socceroos manager, and Hervé Renard, who is in his comeback era, his unfinished business era as Saudi manager. And if that's not enough reason to tune into this game, I don't really know what to tell you, bro. Now we can go ahead and skip the foreplay, gentlemen. Saudi Arabia have been largely an embarrassment in World Cup qualifying so far. I'm looking at the stats under Roberto Mancini. Saudi Arabia is currently 7th amongst all Asian teams in terms of chances created through 4 games, 3 of those games coming at home, and their lone victory so far is an away win in China. Needless to say, it was a rough start, and that's why they've appointed Hervé Renard and sacked Mancini. Now, make no mistake, the number one issue that Renard needs to fix immediately is goal scoring for Saudi Arabia. That's literally it. That is problem number 1, problem number 2, and problem number 3 is putting the ball in the back of the net. They're creating chances. I told you they're 7th in Asia. It's not amazing, but it's not terrible. They're just not scoring enough goals. And if he can fix that, then Saudi Arabia probably will go on to finish 2nd in this group. If he can't, Australia are probably going to go ahead and finish 2nd in this group. Now, the advantage in this immediate match is going to be Australia. It's advantage Socceroos. It's advantage Greg Popovich's cousin, because he's already had a window with this team. He already picked up a big result, getting a draw away at Japan, 1-1 at the Saitama. I think you can say that the team is already bought in to Tony Popovich as manager versus Renard. Yes, he's going to have a new manager bounce. Yes, dad's back or whatever you want to say, but still, it's not that simple. And bad news for Saudi Arabia, or maybe if you're a hater, you could say good news, Salem Al-Dosari is not going to be available for this window because he got hurt in the Champions League. Even though he's 0 for 2 from the penalty spot, and Saudi Arabia should probably be firmly in 2nd place right now if it wasn't for that, you have to acknowledge that he's still the captain of this team. He's still the talisman. He's the face of the national team, and he's still Saudi Arabia's greatest chance threat, especially in transition. So now Hervé Renard's going to have to find an alternative somewhere. The good news for Saudi Arabia is that Mohamed Kano is back. He's available once again. He served his suspension after karate kicking a Chinese player in the balls. I don't care what you want to say, Saudi Arabia are a better team when he's in the lineup. Now, both of these matches in 2022 were extremely close. This was a 0-0 draw last time around, and I wouldn't be shocked if we saw the exact same thing. I do not really think Hervé Renard's going to come out and be super offensive. I think he kind of needs to get the faith back a little bit. He would, of course, love the 3 points, but I think more than that, they'll be prioritizing at least a draw. On the Australian side, I think Popovich is probably going to be pushing for the 3 points, and ultimately, in my prediction for this game, I do think Australia are going to end up winning. I'm kind of feeling a 1-0, something like that. I'm not trying to be disrespectful to Saudi Arabia or Renard. I just think this is a really, really tough debut match for the Green Falcons. Though, again, I wouldn't be surprised if Saudi Arabia stole a game here. Next up, let's talk about Japan versus Indonesia in Jakarta. This is obviously a rematch of the 3-1 Japanese victory at the group stage of the Asian Cup. I was looking at the squads for both of these teams. Obviously, Indonesia continued to call in new players. For Japan, Kyogo Furuhashi has returned to the national team, so people can finally stop being upset about that. Will he actually play? Probably not, but we'll have to wait and see. I think I can keep this one pretty short. I do not see Japan dropping points in this game. I will be straight up stunned if Indonesia get a point here in Jakarta, and that's no disrespect to Indonesia. I just expect them to surrender anywhere from 8 to 12 chances in this game against Japan, and if you look at the statistics and how Japan are converting, they basically score on 34% of their chances created. So if Indonesia concedes 8 to 12 chances in the game, then that means, by my math, Japan are going to score between 2 and 4 goals. I think a clean sheet here for Indonesia would be an absolutely massive accomplishment on its own. And Martin Pais has been a beast, and I think he's going to continue being a beast during qualification, but this is a big ask. Indonesia's hope in this game is going to be their counterattack, which has looked better recently, but it's still not good. The question for Indonesia is, can they successfully counterattack a Japanese side that has basically surrendered 0 good counterattacking opportunities through 4 games. I mean, this is a Japanese defense that the one goal they've conceded is a howler of an own goal from their center back. Going through my memory, I only recall one good chance that Saudi Arabia created against Japan. It was a good save from Zion Suzuki. That's pretty much been the most threatened Japan have been. I have no doubt that the environment's going to be extremely hostile. I think the pitch in Jakarta is usually pretty terrible, and that will benefit Indonesia slightly, but I do not think we're going to see Japan approach the game like we saw Australia approach the game, or Saudi Arabia approach the game, where it's just spamming crosses over and over and over again. Japan have the individual quality to actually beat their defenders out wide, and they can attack through the middle, something that Australia certainly can't do right now. To conclude, if Shin Tae-yong gets a draw here, he's a god, straight up. And he knows that too. So that's going to be the objective here. But how many times have we seen smaller Asian sides try to park the bus against Japan? It never ends well. Every time a team approaches a game like that, we see like a 5-0, 6-0, 7-0. I'm not saying it's going to be that bad. I'm not saying it's going to be that disrespectful to Indonesia, but I do think sitting back is a recipe for disaster here. My final prediction, I'm going to say Japan win this 1-2-0 or 3-0, something like that. Maybe Indonesia get a couple good chances and that's it. Moving on to Bahrain versus China in Rifa. Now, I personally am really excited for this game. I think it's going to be fascinating because if either side wins, could be Bahrain, could be China, it's going to shake up the table. China would be right back in the mix for World Cup qualification. And if Bahrain win this game, then Australia or Saudi Arabia, if they draw, would drop to 3rd or 4th place. I mean, it would be insane. So for the sake of drama, that's kind of what I'm hoping happens. Now, China are still a pretty bad team away from home. I do expect them to get one more win at home during this qualification cycle, and I wouldn't be shocked if it is against Bahrain. But in the Middle East, they don't have the best record. Bahrain are really stubborn in Rifa. It's going to be a big ask for the Chinese. Now, I got a crazy fun fact for you guys here. In the Indonesia match at home, that was the only game through qualifying so far that Bahrain have created more than 3 chances. That's absolutely insane. That being said, I do think they will do that once again here. Branko Ivankovic, the Chinese manager, he knows what time it is. He knows that he can't play possession ball. He knows that he doesn't really have much of a midfield, at least not a midfield that can really control the flow of the game. I'm pretty sure China have the fewest passes completed of any team. Somebody check me down below in the comments. So it's going to be up to Bahrain to break them down, much like Bahrain had to break down Indonesia. However, I do think Indonesia's counterattack is stronger than China's counterattack, and Indonesia probably should have won the game late against Bahrain. I don't really think China are going to continue to be as clinical as they've been. And that's a very important point because if we look at some of the goals, the last 3 goals that China have scored have been incredible. 2 of them have been world-class goals. Like, can they continue to replicate that goal output? I think they're converting 30% of their shots. It's one of the best conversion rates in all of Asia. Like, it's insane right now. Is that sustainable? I don't know. Bahrain will certainly hope the answer is no. Ultimately, I'm going to narrowly say that Bahrain win this game 2-1. I actually think it's going to be very even. Not in terms of possession, Bahrain are going to run away with that, but just in terms of the scoreline, and don't be surprised if China get out of here with the result. Next up, we got China versus Japan. Now, we all remember the 7-0 beatdown that happened in match day 1, and I don't think we're going to see that level again because this game is going to be in China, but I do think Japan are going to win this one decisively. The thing to watch in this match for me is, has China learned their lesson from the first match day? That game was an absolute disaster for China because they didn't really try to counterattack. They gave Japan way too much space repeatedly out wide, and they just allowed themselves to be besieged for 90 minutes. In this Chinese defense, it's not ass cheeks, but it's not good enough to survive a samurai blue onslaught for that long. Like I said, the question is now, has Ivankovic learned from that? Because if he sits back, this is going to be a 4-0. It is. But if he tries to go out there and try to beat Japan in a shootout, then maybe we could see something here. I genuinely think that's the only hope that China have. They have to try to play ball. They have to try to press Japan. They have to look for the long ball over top and just get shots away. Make Zion Suzuki work. That's the only way they get out of here with a point. China at home is pretty intimidating, especially for Japan, but I do not think they're going to be that phased, namely because they just are so much more talented than China. It's not going to be enough. Now, on the Japanese side, I am genuinely curious if Moriyasu rotates the squad, and I believe that he will if Japan beat Indonesia. I think this is the perfect opportunity to start a Kyogo Furuhashi, or the perfect opportunity to give some other midfielders some reps, and if he does that, it's probably going to be a 2-0 Japan, 3-0. If it's the full Japanese A team with Endo, Mitoma, Kubo, Morita, then probably a 3 or 4-0 for Japan is what I'm thinking here. I would love to see the betting odds for a Chinese set piece, though. I think that's how they would likely get a goal in this one. Moving on to Saudi Arabia versus Indonesia in Jakarta, and I think this is going to be a great game. A really, really great game, because Saudi Arabia absolutely need to win this one, and Indonesia can't lose this game, so there's going to be a ton of stakes here. The opportunity here for Indonesia is what I mentioned earlier, the fact that Saudi Arabia cannot hit the broadside of a barn, the fact that they are the least clinical team in Group C. That will keep Indonesia alive, and at that point it's just going to be a game of chess. How many low quality chances can Saudi Arabia get in a row without scoring? How long into the game can Indonesia keep it scoreless, and how many of the counterattacks that Indonesia will inevitably have, and they really gave Saudi Arabia a problem physically in the first game, how many of those chances can Indonesia capitalize on? I think I've said this 1,000 times on Deadball TV, but Indonesia, how they are currently comprised, are better at being an underdog team than they are being a favorite, and they will 100% be the underdog in this match. You see all the new players for Indonesia, and I think they've obviously raised the technical level above most of the teams in Southeast Asia, but they're still not good enough yet to go band for band with the big boys in Asia. I say it every single time I talk about Indonesia in a video. Where's the win against a good team? When are you going to beat somebody not named the Philippines and Vietnam? And I cannot, in good faith, predict that Indonesia are going to win until they do so. Ultimately, I do think Saudi Arabia are going to win this game by 1 goal. I don't know if it's going to be a 1-0 or a 2-1, something like that. It's just, at the end of the day, I think too big of an ask still for Indonesia, now playing a undoubtedly inspired Saudi Arabian side. A Saudi Arabian side that might even play better free-flowing football now that Al-Dosari's injured. That's another fascinating plot line that we're going to have to see in the next window. And finally, we have Bahrain versus Australia in Rifa, and you gotta think the Socceroos are ready to just absolutely kill these guys after they terrorized their way to a 1-0 victory via an own goal. Australia's first of 2 own goals they've scored in the first 4 games of qualifying. I mean, the amount of bulletin board material here that Tony Popovich can use is more than enough to inspire the guys here. The key to Australia is remaining calm, because Bahrain are going to be knees deep in the dark arts. They're going to be flopping, they're going to be rolling around. There's probably going to be 30 minutes of actual football played in this game, and it obviously cost Yengi in the last one. He got a straight red, he lost his head. Most of the Australians lost their head last game. That cannot happen again. The more football that's actually played, the more of an advantage it is for Australia. I kind of see a 1-0 here for the Socceroos. I'm still not at all convinced by their offense, but I'm also not really that convinced by Bahrain's defense. I mean, we saw against Japan, they can be cut up. We even saw against Saudi Arabia. These guys are not invincible. You just need to take your chances, and I do think Australia are a little more clinical than Saudi Arabia, definitely more clinical than Indonesia, and I think ultimately that's going to get them the win. And that's the video, guys. You let me know what you think of my predictions down below in the comments. Remember to drop a like on the video if you enjoyed. Hit subscribe for more Asian footy content. I'll see you on the next one.